Welcome back to the Nomad Hedge, everybody. In today's market rundown, we will be taking a look at the S&P 500, and as usual, we will be looking at the chart of Bitcoin as well. We're also going to put some emphasis on the Russell 2000, and then we'll glance over at the VIX, gold, and the US dollar. So if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing, and let's get into the video. So let's begin by taking a look at the S&P 500 on a daily chart. And as we can see, we have concluded wave 3 here of minor degree. Now, I did mention in a previous video that this area here could have been the conclusion of wave 3-4. But regardless how we look at it, we're still within this wave 5 or progressing toward this last wave 5 of minor degree. Now, if we take a look at the S&P 500 on a weekly chart, we can see that we're still above this 8 EMA, suggesting that this bullish uptrend is intact from April lows. However, when we look at the indicators, we can see that there's some slight deviation or negative divergence here in the momentum of the MACD. For instance, we could almost approach this sell signal, and also the money flow indicator has reached a very strong peak here. So that could give us some indication that we are in fact in wave 5 of minor degree, and that we should see a correction very soon, correcting this entire rally here from April lows. Now, that doesn't mean that we are necessarily going to make new lows. I believe that we're just likely going to see a test of the 55 EMA, or perhaps we're looking at this anchored VWAP or the 233 EMA before beginning a new cycle. Now, this bullish uptrend is intact in our opinion. We believe the bull market will continue, but this is a correction within a bull market. So this is how the S&P 500 is looking. We're also going to glance over Bitcoin because things are looking very, very similar there when it comes to the price action. Switching over to the chart of Bitcoin, and as we can see here, it looks as if we're already concluded wave 5 here, and that if we zoom out, we can see that wave 3 was concluded right here. Now, the reason why I believe this is wave 3 is that if we take a look at some of the indicators here, especially the RSI, we do have a negative divergence from wave 3 towards wave 5. So Bitcoin is typically this, leading indicator. Price always leads first when it comes to the crypto markets, and Bitcoin is the ultimate leader. And so what we're basically seeing right here, and because we haven't broken above all-time highs yet, it suggests that this is just a corrective rally here. So we could be looking at something along the line of this, where we have a double correction, or we could also obviously progress much higher. But either case, if this is wave 3 here and this is wave 4, we are going to progress towards wave 5. Now, it will be interesting if we're starting to break above new all-time highs here, because that could suggest otherwise that this is in fact wave 3, and that it follows basically the same kind of price action we saw with the S&P 500. And so that's how I look at Bitcoin here. Don't be surprised if this former highs here gets rejected, and that we're starting to correct from these levels, correcting this entire rally here from April lows, and we should likely see some support. If we pull up the moving averages, we can see that we do have some candidates here. 233 EMA, we're looking at this point of control of the volume profile, and that would also align with a perhaps retest here of wave 4, which typically where price tends to correct. So that's my view when it comes to BTC, and we're also going to have a look at the Russell 2000 because it could give us some more clues about what's happening in the markets. Let's also take a look at Russell 2000, and right here we do have the Russell on a daily chart, and as we can see, we conclude wave 4 here right at this anchored VWAP. So it looks as if we want to progress towards wave 5, and this level right here, this green line here, looks like a strong candidate. The reason why is because this is a failed auction here when we look at the price action on an intraday chart, and the former highs here from wave 1 primary could be a rejection level, and then we'll eventually find support. Now, the reason why I believe this is wave 3 and wave 4, and the fact that we are progressing towards wave 5, number one is this negative diversion. Potentially we're seeing here the peak here of the RSI, which would suggest that wave 3 is within this area. Now, if we take a look at some of the indicators here, we can see that just like what we saw with Bitcoin, the money flow indicator has peaked, and that this decline here in the money flow indicator would suggest that we are in fact progressing towards wave 5 in the minor degree. The MACD is also showing signs of a slowdown in momentum, and so that would also provide us some guidance where we are in this market. So this is lining up where the S&P 500 is, where Bitcoin is, and for that we're going to take a look at Ethereum and see how the price action looks over there. So let's switch over to Ethereum, and as we can see, we concluded wave 4 right at the 34 EMA, which is typically where wave 4 finds support. So what we're seeing right now is is 5 ways up here, all the way to conclude wave 5. And as we can see, we do have 2 targets here for wave 5 to conclude. One is at around $5,000, and the last one is all the way up to $5,450. Now, both are possible, especially if wave 5 becomes extended. We could easily see this thing moving up to $5,400. And so this is basically what we're seeing across the board with the S&P 500, Russell 2000, and to some degree Bitcoin as well. So this 5 ways move here is going to be critical to see where we then begin to correct this entire move here from April lows, and we should find support in our opinion, and then we will likely begin a new cycle towards the upside again. So we're seeing here on the weekly, again, this is the same kind of setup here where the money flow indicator has peaked, and we're likely going to see some negative divergences across the board, especially on the daily chart here. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see here that we had a spike here on the RSI for wave 3, and we're going to likely see a scenario of something along the line of this. So this is how we view this market. If we're getting a huge drawdown here, we would see that as a new buying opportunity, because we're likely going to see this bull market continue. Now we're going to switch over and take a look at the volatility index, especially for the S&P 500. We're also going to glance over at the gold market and then the US dollar. So let's begin by taking a look at the VIX. This is the volatility index for the S&P 500. And as we can see on Wednesday, we gapped up here and the VIX is up almost 17%. So this is either part of something big happening. After all, we are in this wave 5 wave, the last wave in the market. So this could be in preparation for a correction to start to begin in the markets. But I am that view that the VIX will eventually go lower. We have a few open gaps here, auctions, and I think that the VIX will eventually knock these out before to begin to see more volatility in the market. So as long as we're staying below the prior high here, the VIX is looking okay, but any breakout here would suggest that the markets are likely to follow through on a huge correction. We're also looking at gold, and man, gold is not breaking out. This thing is still struggling to move towards new highs. You know, this is just like a preparation for something to come much sooner, where the markets will correct. And gold has basically been moving sideways or range bound, just waiting for the markets to hit this, their last level. And so the bias is still here towards the downside. We mentioned this previously in many videos that, any highs here will likely get rejected, and the dollar as well. We're seeing here that the dollar has found support here at the 0.618, aligning with this 1 standard deviation or 0.618 deviation from the anchored VWAP. Now, in our last video, we talked about how it found support here at the anchored VWAP, then it got knocked down but found support at 0.618. So this is going to be a critical level to watch here for the dollar. And if we're starting to find a bid here for the DXY, be ready for some corrections in the market, because that could be the catalyst. However, we are looking at this area here as a resistance, because we believe eventually the dollar will, break this long-term trend. If we're going to get a correction, watch the dollar here closely. That could be also signs where the markets are headed. So that was pretty much it for today's video. Quick rundown here for the markets. We looked at the technicals. Again, I do believe we are in this wave 5 scenario where the markets will hit this last wave, and then we'll see if a correction will begin to ensue for the market. So if you haven't already, consider liking and subscribing. I will keep you guys updated. You can follow me on X at Nomad Hedge, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care for now.